Hi everyone, my name is James Feeney. Welcome to or back to my channel. Today I want to talk about Banishing Magick. Specifically, I want to get into what it is that I see Banishing Magick to be, how I use it, where I see it to be useful, some tips and tricks that I've picked up over time and how you might use them, or hopefully find some help in those tips and tricks because I've tested out a lot of different things, and also to share some of my own experience. So I'll start by defining what I see Banishing Magick to be, because I know it's a little bit of a nebulous category that is somewhat intimidating, at least by comparison to other forms of magic. I would say very outrightly benefic or beneficent forms of magic like healing and things of that sort are very accessible, and there isn't much wariness in those areas. And I would say Banishing Magick is in a big gray zone, and sometimes it is grouped in or bunched up with types of magic like hexing and cursing. And while I don't see there to be any inherent issues in hexing and cursing, if that's part of your practice, all the power to you, I don't feel that Banishing Magick is of the same scope that those types of magic are. I feel like it has its own very finite and specific category, and the reason I feel this way is because I engage in Banishing Magick so much, so it's really carved out a spot and I've taken the time to understand what it means to me. So for me, Banishing Magick is, in one way, a form of boundary setting, either magically or energetically. Through doing Banishing Magick or engaging in a banishing practice, you are setting a boundary between yourself and, say, another individual, between yourself and an energy, between yourself and maybe an environment or a paradigm or an emotion or a connection of some sort. So through banishing, you are setting a very strong boundary. So there's something that's very protective about Banishing Magick, and in that way, when you're using Banishing Magick in that way, it is a form of protective magic. So that's one big way I use Banishing Magick, and that's how I kind of see it to be. Like I am erecting this gigantic wall that the thing that I don't want to have any connection to is on the other side of, and that I'm firmly planted on my safe side within a little citadel. So that's one way that I view Banishing Magick. Another is this sort of removal or cleansing. So this, I would say, takes place a lot more when I am banishing an energy or an emotion or something that's happening to me in a way. And in that, I'm seeing it more as a sort of cleansing, or I almost feel like a magical surgeon in a way. I'm digging into myself, dredging up something, and then dispelling it and keeping it gone. So I've cleansed myself in some way through doing that, but I've also kind of learned about myself. So there's this darker inner introspective aspect that comes with Banishing Magick, I tend to find. So if I were to actually group it in with types of magic that I feel are very similar, I would say that protection and cleansing, for me at least, in the way I use Banishing Magick, are closer than hexing and cursing. Of course, I'm sure there are ways in which you could use Banishing Magick that do fall more toward the categories and the sides of cursing and hexing, but for me that's not generally how I use it. And the first spell I actually ever cast officially, so I know many of us have cast spells when we were little out in nature, and I'm not really speaking to that. I'm speaking more so to when I identified with a magical practice and sat down and started to learn and then cast or engaged in Banishing Magick. The first spell I did was a banishing spell, and if you go back, I don't recommend you do this, but if you go all the way back to one of my first videos, I do a little bit of a story time on this, speaking about my experience with banishing in this way, and I'll share it for the sake of learning, but this is not really the type of banishing that I would engage in now after seeing how it worked out and the repercussions and all those sorts of things. So I decided to cast a banishing spell on my roommate who I didn't want to cohabitate with anymore. And I only did this after going through all the steps when I was at college to switch rooms or to maybe move, and I'd done all that paperwork and the filing, but none of it was really going through, and it was a time-consuming process, and I was not a fan of the environment I was in. And so I turned to magic, and this was as my magical practice and path was sort of burgeoning into something. And so I did a lot of research and cast this very potent magical banishing spell. It took place over 9 nights on the waning moon. I had a black candle that was in the shape of a man. I did all these sorts of things, and I really gave my all into it, and it did end up working. We separated. He went to a different room, but at the same time I went to a different room, so it almost banished us both from the same space. He then, and I'm not saying this is necessarily because of the spell, but it was a very odd coincidence, so take it how you will. He got mono and got pretty sick, and I ended up getting mono too, but not to the same degree that he did, and he had to leave school for a while. And in that same span of time, he had some financial issues, and his girlfriend, who he was with at the time, discovered that he was cheating, and they broke up. And I don't mean to cast judgment, but it was difficult to maybe live with a roommate who you met their significant other and you knew that they were lying to them, and that he would bring the person he was cheating with over, and he would do very shady things, and I didn't like what he was doing. And then on top of that, there was just the sort of cleanliness and the dialogue that was unpleasant. So I did this banishing spell. It worked. There were repercussions, I would say, just because of what was happening to him, because we both lived in the same space, then affected me. So in trying to maybe foist him out of my sphere, but still physically being near him, I then faced some of the same repercussions or same energetic aspects that he did. And so that's something I'd say to be very wary of, and I don't recommend casting magic or engaging in a magical practice that affects another person without their permission. That's not something I do anymore. But I was young, it was my first spell, and that's what happened basically. And I've also found over the course of years that the type of magic that is the most potent and powerful and yields the most results is Banishing Magick for me. So I don't know if that's a category of magical practitioner, if I am maybe a banishing witch of some sort, but that's really the type of magic I try to use the most, because I see the best results, and they usually happen very quickly, and I see what's going on around me in a very clear way. So take that how you will. I know that there are some out there who really favor certain types of magic because they find that it's very conducive for who they are, their energies, and their maybe moral compass. I have a video on morals and magic if you want to check that out. I'll try to remember to link it somewhere. But Banishing Magick for me has just been a mainstay staple, and you might wonder, how do you use Banishing Magick for so many different things, given that it's really about banishing or getting rid of something? And at first, it did feel a bit limiting when I was thinking about using Banishing Magick. There was a lot of opportunities to use other types of magic, but I also think that it is very multi-purpose, just as many forms of magic are. It depends on how you frame the working. So for example, say I want good health and I'm facing a health ailment of some sort. Instead of engaging in healing magic, I could just as easily do a spell that is banishing the thing that I don't want. So say I'm sick and I have a very specific condition and I want to get rid of it or get healthy again. Instead of healing myself, I might do a banishing spell for the condition that I have that I no longer want. So you can achieve the same ends, but through different means, basically, is what I'm saying. So somebody who engages in Banishing Magick, you could use that to, say you even are in the market and you want a relationship of some sort, a friendship, a romantic partnership. You could choose to say banish your loneliness or banish any sort of boundaries that are keeping you from maybe meeting somebody. So there's a bunch of ways you can use Banishing Magick that achieve the same ends as other forms of magic, but through different means. And I find that my mind and the way that I function jives very well with ideas of how something can be banished to my benefit, if that makes sense. Not in a selfish way where I'm trying to force anything upon others or affect others, aside from that one anecdote, but I don't do that anymore. But I do view banishing things within myself to reach certain points. Maybe I'm banishing fear so that I'm able to do something. Maybe I'm banishing obstacles within my way or self-imposed obstacles so that I can reach a certain goal. So Banishing Magick for me is extremely multi-purpose. I find that almost any sort of goal I want to accomplish or anything that I want to do magically can be done through Banishing Magick. It just means that I have to frame what I'm doing a little bit differently. So I have some tools here, and I guess I'll go through a few tips and tricks so that you may all maybe benefit from this if you aren't so familiar with Banishing Magick or you're considering engaging in it. For me, it's probably my biggest mainstay and form of magic used, and in that way I feel like I can offer a few tips, hopefully, that are helpful. So I've only brought out a handful of materials. Realistically, as many will know and say, you don't need any real materials to practice or engage in any form of magic. All you need is yourself. So in banishing, you could just as easily sit down on the floor and really focus your mind, maybe come up with a little chant or mantra. You could write something on a piece of paper. You could do it in a sort of sigil work. You could do it through candle magic. There's infinite ways to go about engaging in any form of magic, especially Banishing Magick, but these are a few materials that I find that I use and love. So if you're engaging in Banishing Magick and you use candles at all in your practice, black candles are going to be the one to go for. Black is really about that banishing energy. It has this darkness to it, and that darkness to me is about the inner aspects of the self. And I think that when we're banishing something, we're confronting something deeper, something that sits maybe a little bit below the actual conscious mind. And so for me, darkness really symbolizes the unknown. And there is a lot of unknown in banishing, and there is something very introspective and meditative within Banishing Magick. And so the black candle symbolizes more than just outright banishing. For me, it symbolizes a return to the self, a sort of darkness of bringing things into the light or potentially shunning them to the side. So black candles are definitely a must. I love the smaller ones because I can use like one a night, but you could also get like a big votive candle that you continually use throughout a practice. And yeah, black candles are definitely a big one for me. Next, I brought this out as just an example, but I mean, these are wooden matches, wooden black matches, but it has the moon cycles on it. Honestly, anything black for Banishing Magick is going to be beneficial if you're looking for color correspondences, but I brought this out with the moon cycles or the moon phases because I take the moon phases into account a lot more heavily when I'm doing Banishing Magick than I do with other forms. So whereas when you're trying to manifest something, when you're trying to heal, when you're trying to cleanse, well, cleansing can be done kind of at any point, I think, at least, but things like healing and such are better for waxing moons, whereas Banishing Magick is going to be more potent, or it ties in with the waning cycles of the moon. And so I tend to wait out and wait for waning moons to conduct banishing spells, and most of my banishing spells take place over the course of multiple nights. I find that's really helpful, especially on an odd number as opposed to an even number. I find with healing spells and manifesting spells that even numbers work really well, but for banishing spells, odd numbers work better. So depending on how big the working is, that's how many nights I'm probably going to engage in the practice. So say it's something pretty serious and big, I might take 9 nights to conduct the spell. If it's more of something small like a minor inconvenience, I might do 3 nights. But I do find that multiple nights on a waning moon, an odd number of nights I should say, is how I've found the magic to work the best. That's just my opinion. You might not feel the same way, but I would say if you're looking for direction, maybe give that a shot. So odd number of nights, waning moon, and the amount of nights you feel is proportionate to what it is that you're trying to banish. So if it's something major, maybe go for 13 nights. I believe that's where you would cap out with the waning moon, because it takes about 13 nights to go from full to new. So you might even start the night after the full moon and then culminate on the start the night after the full moon and then culminate on the new moon. You might try something like that if it's a really, really big thing, but I do find that works very well for me. Next, if you're somebody who's into crystals or other sort of bits and bobs that correspond, crystals are always something that I use. The smoky quartz is a major one for me. You may have seen it. It's probably one of my most used crystals, and it's also very heavily used because I engage in Banishing Magick and use it for that. So smoky quartz is a really great one. Black onyx is a great one. Very grounding and earthy stones I find to be very good for banishing, things like moss agate, hematite, black tourmaline, what else, shungite. I'm trying to think of other examples. Obsidian, black obsidian is really great for banishing as well. I actually wear and use this necklace as a sort of talisman for the waning moon, and it looks like a dark moon. Same with this ring, they're matching. I got them from the same person on Etsy, but to me these actually are little talismans that can keep the new moon energy with me. So when I'm engaging in Banishing Magick, I might wear these, and I wore them purposefully for this video so I could show you. So having little talismans, using black candles, paying attention to the moon cycles, the number of days, those things are all going to maybe enhance your mindset, going to get you focused and get you feeling like you're in the right environment to be able to make this work. Another big tip for Banishing Magick that I find is the casting of a circle, which I know many do and many also don't do, but I don't find casting a circle as important for other forms of magic, but for some reason casting a sort of energetic barrier circle for Banishing Magick is very important, because I want to drum up all this energy. I want to kind of bring things to a head and keep them confined within this space, and then ultimately when I break the circle or end the circle, I want it to be sort of dispersed, dispelled, and sent outward to do its bidding, my energy at least. So for me, casting a circle is really important. I also find there's a great visual aspect, so if you can maybe have a picture of what it is that you're trying to banish. If it's an emotion, you might pick something abstract, or you might pick a color itself on a sheet of paper. Whatever that may be, I do find that a visual aspect of what it is that you're trying to banish enhances your focus, which is then going to lend to the spell and lend to your intention setting, and it's going to hone you in a little bit further. So visual aspect is definitely important. I'm trying to think what else is pretty important. I tend to treat it more like a meditative process, so I'll come up with a chant or a recitation of some sort that's easy to repeat, and I will maybe stand before the candle and repeat over and over again. So I find that repetition and mantra and recitation and what would be another word for it that's like more something of that sort. You know what I'm talking about. I find that is very helpful. So you're really ingraining what it is that you're saying into your head, and the best part is that if it's simple and repetitive, by the end you almost don't realize the words that you're saying, and it's so subconscious at that point. You're drilling it into yourself in such a way that it is inextricable, that it is seated so far back that your unconscious mind is working on the magic while your conscious mind is not even thinking about it. So I find that meditation, mantra, and recitations that are repetitive are really helpful, and that there's this sort of meditative aspect that takes place on all of the nights of the working, and that's usually how I go about it. I like to anoint the candle that I'm using every night, and I find that adds some potency to the actual magic, and also I use the candle with the flame, the black candle with the flame, as an energetic focal point to draw things to it, to harness my energy, and that way when I set it, when I turn it off for the night, it kind of does its thing. And I also, back to using smaller candles, I like that these can be used in a single night, because it means that each night I'm kind of burning down the thing. So it's like I'm trying to get rid of it, and as the candle burns, the thing is getting further away from me. It is becoming less attached to me in a way. And so say I did a nine night banishing spell using these candles, it would be nice to very visually see one burn out every night, and it's very satisfying in that way. So just a little extra tidbit. I've shown these candles before. I really like them. It's this 104 pack colored candles, unscented, and you can get them for like 20 bucks or something on Amazon, and there's a bunch of colors in them, and I really like it for that. So that's about all in terms of Banishing Magick that I can think of. I'd love to know what forms of magic you find to be the most potent for you, that you engage in the most. Also, your experiences with Banishing Magick, how you feel about it. Is it something that sits in a moral area that's a little bit gray and that you don't tend to like? Is it more beneficent and helpful for you? Is it something that you use to, that mirrors more so cursing and hexing, and why is that? I'm so curious about those sorts of things. So let me know in the comments below. I hope you are all well. Like and subscribe if this was fun and helpful for you or got you thinking at all. And until next time, bye.